So one of the things I want to do tonight is I get a lot of questions about, is my money safe when I have it in the bank? And a lot more lately about, can the bank seize my money if they're going to be going bankrupt? Because a lot of people are seeing that out there and reading about it. So I wanted to shed a little bit of light on that so that you know and are better educated about what that actually means. So the short answer to that is yes. If a bank is in danger of going bankrupt, it can essentially seize cash assets of clients of the bank that are in their deposit accounts. Now, there's a lot of stipulations to that. The first of which is they can't seize anything which is covered by FDIC insurance. FDIC insurance is it's the FDIC is an agency of the federal government, and it actually covers the money that's deposited in a financial institution in checking, savings, money market accounts, CDs, any kind of cash deposits of $250,000, but that's also tiered across four different things. One is individually owned. So if you have an account in just your name, you can have up to $250,000 in there, and it's covered by FDIC. Not only if the bank fails would you be owed that money back from the FDIC, but in one of these events where there is going to be a bank failure, the bank could not seize those assets because they're covered. The second tier of that is jointly held accounts. So if you and your significant other have a bank account together in both of your names, that would be covered for up to $500,000. So if you have an account in just your name, it's $250. If she has an account in just her name or their name, it's $250. And then if you have one that you hold together, that's $500,000, $250 per person. So that's up to $1 million in coverage that they would not be able to seize in the event of a failure or projected bankruptcy. The third of which would be is if you hold a trust. So basically you go to an attorney, have them create a trust. The owners would be the trustees, and then you would have beneficiaries on that. Or if you just simply have yourself as the owner and a beneficiary listed on the account as payable on death, which means if you die, that money just goes through them. It doesn't have to go through the courts or anything like that. So that actually gets set up where it's called an informal revocable trust. And the way that works for the tier is it is covered for up to $250,000 per beneficiary per owner. So what does that look like? You and your significant other have this informal revocable trust jointly owned with the two of you, and you have two kids listed as beneficiaries. So it's $250 per child per owner. That's actually $1 million in coverage that you'd have on that. So now just titling in those three ways, we've seen that we've actually established FDIC insurance for $1.5 million. The fourth tier is if you have money in an IRA, that's covered for an additional up to $250,000. But essentially, if you have money listed in those ways, held in accounts like that, and the bank were to go bankrupt, for them to be able to seize those assets, you would have to have more than $2 million in those accounts to be able to do that. So you got to make sure that the titling's there. You have to make sure that the purpose behind it is that you really want to leave that money behind to the kids. But another thing to think about is when they say, oh, they're going to seize your assets, what they're essentially doing is, yes, they can seize any assets over those FDIC limits, but they have to, in exchange, give you shares, fair value shares of their stock for up to that amount that they're seizing. Now, everybody would say, hold on a second, I don't want shares in a failing company. Really, it at least gives them an option to be able to turn a profit and bring the bank back up. Where if they were going bankrupt anyways and they didn't do that, you wouldn't have any money over your FDIC coverage anyways. So in my humble opinion, it's kind of a moot point whether or not they can seize those assets, because I'd rather them seize them and give me stock that I can either try to sell for cheap or maybe the bank turns around and you actually make a little bit of a profit on it, as opposed to them just going bankrupt. You get the FDIC insured money that you have, and anything over that was just lost. So that's a question that has started populating out there. This came along with the Dodd-Frank Act after, the whole housing crisis. So it's not really anything new, but as anytime politics get involved and people start to worry about these things, they'll start to just ask more questions, look into things a little bit deeper. So that's what's generating a lot of that. If you've seen more articles on that lately, that's where it's coming from. So I think it's important when we look or hear about things like this to get the actual scoop of what's going on with that, so that we don't make a knee-jerk reaction to feel like, oh, I've got to go and drag money out of here and spread it all around town. So look at your titling. If you've got, large assets for those dollar amounts, make sure that you're maximizing your FDIC coverage and just really protecting yourself in the event of a bank failure, especially with some of the smaller banks. Just because we've seen with COVID times and all that, there are a lot of times that what was once a very profitable company may not be able to keep those going forward. So with that said, if you have any questions, if you want to know other ways that you can protect it, jump in here, ask questions,